All right. Let's get started. So I will talk about geometric versus exponential distribution. Basically, we had that alone theorem. The probability of a POW success in k hashes is expressed with per hash success probability P. We now aim to improve it by embedding the concept of time into it. So, this POW success is like a coin flip problem, right? Coin flip problem. So what is the probability of coin flip success? So maybe coin flip success here is to mean top of the coin, then success. Bottom of the coin, no success. And then the success probability is P, right? And then how many coins do you have to flip in order to see the first success? That type of thing is this POW problem. But here there is no time embedded in it, right? Because if you flip a coin, how frequently are you flipping the coin? And then what is the time between one coin flip to the other? That is the the time. Basically, we want to embed into this experiment. Experiment here means this hash success. So we now aim to improve it by embedding the concept of time into it. So that's the concept that we are building right now. And then once you have embedded this time concept into this POW success event, then we can talk about block generation time. So how long does it take for a single block to be formed, right? What is the average time? What is the distribution? So basically, that's going to be what we are getting at. So here we are getting this, right? So time is obviously non-negative number. And then if there is a mean success time, so expectation of success time is this time right here. In the case of Bitcoin, it is 10 minutes. And in the case of Ethereum, it is 12 seconds, something like that, right? So mean success time. And then since it is a mean value, basically we can talk about distribution. We can talk about the distribution of success time. So this here is the probability distribution. Probability distribution, right? Like that. So if you know this distribution, then you can calculate the variance of this distribution. Variance is what? Defined to be expectation of success time. Let's say t is a random variable, and then expectation of that random variable, and take the square of that. That's the concept of variance, right? And then we can use that to describe how spread this distribution function is. Okay? Obviously, it is bounded below 0, and then, but unbounded to the infinity. Right? Since you have some mean value defined right here, it should decay at a certain speed to the infinity. Right? So that's what we are getting at, right? So here we call this t be the random variable. This is random variable. Random variable. What is this random variable? What it's basically, it's a random experiment of a POW, right? Large number of nodes they are in contention to make this block as the first, right, among all the peers, right? So this t is a random variable, and then basically this takes the range of this time, right? This time. So this one is the range space of t. Range space of t is what? Belonging to this set from 0 to infinity, right? So that's this random variable, and that we call block generation speed if we take the expectation of that. So given a unit time, one can determine the probability that the number of POW successes or the number of blocks formed. Okay. So given a unit time, let's say unit time is 1 second, then what is the probability that the success occur within this time interval? Okay. That type of thing can be defined. And then using the Alone theorem that we got, the CDF, geometric distribution, which can be defined by P and K. So what is the probability of success in K unit of time? We can talk about it, right? So in this K trials, what is the success? And then that the probability is given by this, as we have seen last time. Now we want to define a new random variable S. S is now has a time concept within it. Okay. So recall K is the random time index at which duration the POW success occurs. Right. Time here means how many coin tosses. Right. And then as you have seen that the time duration per single hash generation, we call it capital T. For a fast CPU, T is very small. So T should be very small. For example, 1 terahashes per sec mining chip can generate 1 terahashes for a single second. So the time duration for a single hash generation is inverse of that. So it is 1 minus 12 seconds. So it is a picosecond. Right? By the way, pico is 10 to the minus 12, right? All right. So T is a picosecond. And now we can divide the time axis into T, 2T, 3T, and so on, up to KT and K plus 1T and so on, right? So if we talk about the kth time success, then what we mean by that is this one right here, right? This time interval. Success in this time. So success in first try, success in second try, third try, and so on, right? So success in K plus 1 try is, I believe, is this interval. So this is first try, second try. So that means from time T to from T to 2T, that is the second try, right? So this is K plus 1's try. Right? Okay. All right. Then using this P and T given this very small interval, we can define S. Okay. Since T is very small, it's a picosecond. We can treat S to be continuous variable. That's what we are getting at. Okay. And then basically utilizing what I have just said, the probability of KT less than small kt is defining this capital K times T to be S now. So that's continuous time now. that continuous time S is less than equal to capital, lowercase k times t. And then this is now, I'm going to treat it as continuous time. Okay, so probability that S is less than or equal to t. And then using the calculus, we can show that this probability greater than k can be expressed as e to the minus lambda t. So I'm not going to go through all this teeny-weeny arithmetics. And then as you can verify, if you have a p very small, this part becomes e. This part becomes e. And then this lambda is nothing but p over t. So we have successfully described exponential distribution with p and t. Okay, so given p and t, we know what lambda is, and then once you know what lambda is, then you can define this distribution function. Okay, so what is the probability S less than or equal to small t? Then it is 1 minus e to the minus lambda t. Right? So that's the distribution. And then 1 minus lambda t looks something like this for positive lambda. So obviously we are talking about positive lambda, block generation speed. So given unit time, what is the probability of success? Okay. So that's the block generation speed. All right. And the inverse of that 1 minus of this is this one right here. That's the distribution we are talking about. Okay. So this is a cumulative distribution, right? And then what is going to be the probability distribution function for this one? You take the derivative of this function, right? So that's what it is. All right. And then we now aim to determine the lambda. So we do a sample calculation. For example, suppose a mining chip with a hash rate 10 to the power of 12 hashes per sec, and the time duration per hash is 1 picosecond. Okay, like I said, then determine what is the lambda, and let's see if we now aim to determine lambda. So recall the average number of hashes per single success for a block generation, or block generation is e to the power of k, which is 1 over p. So that was 10 to the power of 12 hashes per block. So thus the lambda's unit is inverse of this, which is block per hash. So P is block per hash. And then T is what? Second per hash. So block per hash divided by second per hash. So hash cancels top and bottom. So it is block per second. So lambda is block per second. Given unit amount of time, how many blocks can you generate? That's what it is. And then here, this is number of hash. So given this, you can calculate, you can obtain the hash rate from Bitcoin network, for example. Then you figure that out right here, and then you can, from here, you can construct P, right? And so on. Now, the lambda is block generation speed, so basically block per second. Okay, and then if you invert lambda, what do you get? Invert lambda, then you get T block, right? Which is expected value of K divided by the chip rate, R chip. So that is 10 to the power of 20, well, that was this one. And then R chip is 10 to the power of 12. Okay? And then if you divide the two, then the unit has to be equal to second per block. And then that is 10 to the power of 8 second per block. So it takes, in the average sense, 10 to the power of 8 seconds to generate a single block. And then if you divide it by the second per year, right, then it can translate to 3.15 year per block. Okay, so that's this number, 1 over lambda. So here in my notation right here, maybe I can say that using my notation on this lecture note, this should be T block. So T block. Okay. Just so T block. T block. All right. And that's that. Then from the network hash power, and then block generation speed, network hash power versus block generation speed. Bitcoin's network hash rate is total mining rate of all online nodes. Suppose the whole network is divided into two pools of computers, say pool A and pool B. There are two pools. And then the hash rate of pool A is twice that of pool B, right? And then what is the block generation speed of A? Okay, so you get the total hash rate from the network, and then there are two networks, A and B, and then A is twice that of pool B, so the block generation speed is going to be what? Lambda A plus lambda B, that should be equal to one block, right? But since the network A is faster in generating blocks compared to network B, so lambda A, you can say, is 2 times lambda B. So you substitute that into this equation right here, then you get 3 times lambda B is equal to 1. So that is, after that, then lambda B is, 1/3 block per 10 minutes. And then since you got lambda B, you substitute that into this equation, then you get lambda A. So 2/3 block per 10 minutes, like that. All right, so that's what it is. And then the double spending attack possibility. Basically, if you have two different networks, A's and B's, and then if A is 51%, B is 49%, and then if A is the attacker, then the attacker can generate these blocks faster than the honest network B. In such a case, attack can be successful. Okay? If honest node network is 51% or more, and the attacker's network is 49% or less, then it is very difficult for the attacker to be successful. The probability is going to get smaller and smaller, as the proportion gets smaller and smaller. Okay? Sounds good? If you have any question, let me know. And immutable file keeping technologies and so on. So here, the most important thing is this concept lambda, right? Lambda. Block generation speed, okay? Lambda is, you need to get used to this concept of lambda, okay? Lambda is what? number of blocks per given unit of time. Okay? In the Bitcoin case, it is 1 block per 10 minutes, for example. That's lambda. Okay? So you now learn the concept of lambda. Okay? Once you know lambda, then you know the distribution function of this, right? So that's it. Do you have any question on this? Very obvious? Yeah. All right. And then double spending attack. If an attacker has more than 50% of the network hash, then the attacker will be successful. If the honest nodes has more than 50%, this network will be safe. Okay. But it is all, this statement that I'm making is all probabilistic. The probability of success is small, right? Compare the probability of failure, right? And I will talk about double spending attack probability in greater detail in the following lectures. So you don't have to worry too much about this right now. All right. So for example, if you are curious about that probability, you can just visit our lectures later on the double spending attack probability right here. So right here, attacker versus honest node. Yeah, we'll get to this later on, but if you are curious, you can jump right into this lecture note, and there is a video as well, so you can take a look at it, okay? So, but I will cover this later on, right? Probably before the midterm. All right, so let's go back to that lecture. All right, so once you know the block generation speed, the concept of that, and the block generation time, you just invert it. That is the block generation speed. Right? All right. The rest of this lecture note you can read and then watch the video for the rest of the 5th lecture note. It is about data immutability. Basically, it tells you, you need to hash connection is not enough in order to get the data immutability. You need to impose POW onto the block. Only then you will get the data immutability. Then what is the data immutability? No one can change it unless you redo all the work. Right? That's what data immutability. Immutability is no one can change. Right? But since someone has put large amount of work in order to produce a single block, like more than 3 years, if you do it alone. So if you have to, change some content in the blockchain, you have to redo this work all alone, which is almost impossible, because this ledger is keep getting increased, within a single block generation time, adding more blocks. So in order to be able to change it, you have to run faster than this increasing blockchain, right? You have to run faster and then generate more blocks than the honest network to be able to change something, right? So which is almost impossible. All right, so that's what it is. Do you have any question on this part? Yeah? POS? Yeah. POS? Can also be data immutability. Proof of stake? Yes. I haven't taught you about the proof of stake. We'll get to that later on, right? But if I give answer right now, short answer. So what is the proof of stake? Probably I have to start with, because the rest of them don't know about that. What is the proof of stake? 그지? 이게 아직 define도 안 된 거를 질문을 하면은 내가 답하기도 그렇지, 그지? So, but there is a proof of stake versus proof of work, comparison. Proof of stake is the one that Ethereum community has, adapted last year, right? Proof of stake is basically trying to protect the network integrity using stake. How much stake do you have to make, right? Versus how much work do you have to put on. See, if you, your question is out of context. So if you have a stake, if you have a large amount of asset staked for protection of network, then proof of stake says you need to have more assets staked, right, in order to be able to attack it. Right? So that's the two different mechanisms. One is, making protection based on stake. The other one, making protection based on amount of work. They are kind of similar, right? But the major difference here is that if you use money, so here is money actually. You need to stake a certain amount of Ethereum, right, to be able to participate as a miner, right? And versus here, you need to invest money to purchase mining machine to be able to participate in the network. So I'll stop right here because rest of them doesn't know about the proof of stake. Okay, I have to first explain what is the proof of stake, but it takes a large amount of time, maybe 10 minutes of lecturing, to be able to answer it perfectly. Anyway, so proof of stake is Ethereum community has adapted last year. So we will get to that probably later on when we talk about other types of consensus algorithms. Okay. All right, now I will get to the next part of the lecture, which is sixth. And transactions, timestamp server, Estonian blockchain, and so on. So Bitcoin transaction. Basically, Bitcoin is a chain of signatures. And as we have discussed in the past, so probably this part of the note, you can just read about it or watch the video that I have done. So Bitcoin is a chain of signatures, and then has this type of structure. And then double spending problem. Since this is Satoshi Nakamoto's words exactly, maybe we can read about it and move on. So the problem, of course, is the payee can't verify that one of the owners did not double spend the coin, right? So a common solution is to introduce a third party, trusted one, like a bank, right? The bank basically checks every transaction for double spending. If there is no double spending, then bank allows transaction. But here, Satoshi Nakamoto tried to do this without a bank, right? That's the point. So he says that after each transaction, coin must be returned to mint, returned to the mint. This is probably English language. Try to say that the person who generates coin, right? So basically a banker or a bank, to issue a new coin, and the only coins issued directly from the mint are trusted not to be double spent. The problem with the solution is that the fate of the entire money system depends on the bank, right? If bank is having problem, then the whole system collapses. That's what he's saying. And then we need a way for the payee to know the previous owners did not sign earlier transactions. And then for our purposes, the earliest transaction is the one that counts, and then we don't care about the later attempts. So if at a given moment of time, all we have to care is, was there a double spending transaction before this time that I'm doing the transaction? So the only way to confirm this without a bank is to have all the transactions published, right? So that we can check it. The only way to confirm the absence of a transaction is to be aware of all transactions. You get it? Okay? So if there was a double spending transaction, right? For example, you know what we have done before? If A is the payer, B is the payee, and then we are talking about the viewpoint of payee, right? And then this type of a transaction we are talking about, right? If a payee wants to make sure that A has enough BTC in his possession to make this transaction, then B has to be able to see all A's assets, right? So basically, if A has more than 2 BTC, if a payee can see and verify, then at this time point, let's say timestamp 1, which is current time, right? And then at this time point and before, A has more than 2 BTC, then we can be assured that, this transaction is double spending free, right? That's what this one is saying. Okay. So we have done this previously using the block diagram, right? You remember that? So the only way to confirm the absence of a transaction is to be aware of all transactions. So A has many, recipient addresses in the past, and then those records are scribed in the blockchain, right? Then we can sum them all up. So for example, A's address is the amount of money in the A's addresses, and then we can sum them all up in the past, right? Before time of this event, let's say, maybe. I just have to read it like that. So A, the assets, money of the given to A, right? Money given to A is equal to summation of all transactions. So transaction and belonging to A, address A, and maybe we give index I, Tx, and then those transactions Mi, Tx. So all the money given to A, right, before this time, T1, if you sum them all up, then basically that's what I mean by MA. Okay. So maybe a simple example could be, in the past, right? So here is the time T1. T1 is, let's say, 9, 2010. No. 2023. Yeah. January 1st. And then time before that. So basically here is t minus 1 year was 2022 January 10, and t minus 2, which is 2010 December 10th, something like that, right? And then there was a transaction in the ledger that A has received 10 Bitcoin back then, and from C, and from D, A has received 20 BTC, right? If these transactions are all recorded in the blockchain, then MA is what? Addition of the two, which is 30 BTC. That's what I'm trying to express. Okay? Since A has enough assets in the blockchain that I can see, I here means payee. I can go there and take a look at that, right? This guy has 30 BTC. Then this guy is trying to spend 2 BTC to me, right? Then it's okay, right? That's what I mean. Okay. Cool. Is this obvious, right? That some of the students, has an expression that I don't know what's going on. So if you don't understand this, let me know, right? I can explain. Istiak, do you have a question? You got it? You got what I said? But your expression says, I don't know what's going on. Huh? If you have a question, let me know. Rest of them, this is clear? Okay. So that's this sentence right here. Because all these transactions are published, I can verify by myself. That's what it is. Okay. Blockchain is no one to trust because I have a means to verify it. I can check it if this is okay or not. I don't have to rely on a bank or third party. Why? Because it is all published. All right, so double spending. To accomplish this without a third party, transactions must be publicly announced, and we need a system for participants to agree on a single history of the order. So this one, in order to do this without a trusted third party like a bank, we need to have a P2P system that agree on the state change. Okay? When does a state change occur? Let me ask you then. When does stake changes? State of the ledger. When does so blockchain is a ledger, right? Because it shows the history of the assets, right? For each address, right? Address is like an account, right? In a bank, right? And then when does the state change occur to these accounts?
When a new block is
when each time when there is a new block which is full of transaction is added to it, then there is a state change, right? From one bank account state to another bank account state, right? When you call the API of the bank, right? It's the same thing, right? All right, so that's that. Thank you very much for your feedbacks. So I at least know I'm moving with you guys, right? So in order to do this, then we need a timestamp. Why do we need a timestamp? Because we need to know which transaction is first and then which one is next. Without timestamp, we don't know, right? All right. So another thing is that once when I make this transaction at time t, which is later than this event, do I need to worry about double spending after this time point, which is current time? Do I need to worry about the I here means payee, right? Do the payee need to worry about any double spending attempt by A after this time point? No, right? So as long as the payee is concerned, if this amount of money is double spent or not, that's all I have to worry about, right? And then after this got published, it's the next payee's job to verify, right? Because this is going into the history, and then another person receives a fund from A, then that person needs to verify it, because mine has been already published, right? So that's what it is. So this timestamp is important. But here there is a limitation, right? In order for a block, so each block you have a timestamp, right? Timestamp per block. So this is a block, right? There are transactions A to B, to BTC, C to D, some BTC, right? And then there are about thousands of transactions within a block. And then it has a timestamp in it. Timestamp. Right? So any payee need to see the transactions of A in the past and within the block, right? This A might try to spend to some person F. He got only 30 BTC, but he's trying to spend 30 BTC here. What happens? So in the past, there is no double spending, but right here there is a double spending, right? Because sum of the two transactions is 32 BTC, right? Which is more than what he has. He has only 30 BTC, right? So who is the responsible for not allowing this type of block? Who is responsible for that? Minor. So miners need to check if there is any double spending. If there is what miners do? Miners check the sign of A, right? Sign of A. So check the sign of A, and then this is valid. Okay, all right. This got signature, so it is valid. So first, the miner needs to check the signature of each transaction, if they are valid or not. And then second, miners also need to check if there is double spending attempt or not. Okay, so two things. So miners has to check it. And then why miners are checking it? What happens if miners have done sloppy work, not checking this correctly? What happens? He spent a lot of time to put the POW. So basically, mine means putting the POW. So he has to spend a lot of electricity, right? And then made this. But he said, he has allowed this double spending attack, right? And then what happens to the miner after he has published this block. What happens to other miners? Would the other miner accept this block?
They will not verify.
Huh?
They will not verify.
So there will be a verification failure by the other other miners. So this become invalidated. So he just spent his electric cost for nothing, right? He has paid a lot of effort, but he didn't get any block reward, right? So that is the reason. All right. All right. So I'm starting to get response. So I am assured that I am getting through to you. All right. We need a way for the payee to know the previous owners did not sign earlier transactions. For our purposes, the earliest transaction is the one that counts. So we don't care about later attempts to double spend, right? The only way to confirm the absence of a transaction is to be aware of all transactions. All right. All right, we have done that. So there is a need for time stamping, right? We need to put time stamping per each block. So then we will be able to discern which came first, which came later, right? Within the block, we should not allow double spending. Outside the block, we just need to care about the previous transactions, previous blocks, right? And then each block needs a time stamping. Okay, so that is what it is. The solution Bitcoin proposes begins with a timestamp server. Timestamp server works by taking a hash of a block of items. So items here is the transactions to be time-stamped and widely publishing the hash, such as in a newspaper or a Usenet post. Okay, so published in the internet or in a newspaper. And then there is Satoshi gave this type of these references, 4 references, 1993, 1993, 1991, and so on. So timestamp server proves that the data must have existed at that time. Okay, obviously, in order to get into the hash, so each timestamp includes the previous timestamp in its hash, forming a chain, with each additional timestamp reinforcing the ones before it. Okay, so what he said can be manifest by this picture. So block of items, block of transactions, put into the hash function as an input, and then previous hash as an input as well. Then it generates a hash, and then this goes into the next block hash, and then block of items, and then put it into this hash function as an input, right? And then generates a hash. So this is basically the blockchain structure that it supposes. And then each block has a timestamp in it. So this one comes first and this one next because of this structure, right? And if a timestamp server indicates the existence of a hash value at a certain time point, then a legitimate ledger can indeed be made. And you can read about it. Timestamp server, right? Once you have a timestamp server, it is very useful to make a blockchain, right? In order to see this P2P node to see if there is any double spending attempt or not. And then he also talked about government running the time stamping service, right? Then it becomes a private blockchain, he says. Private here means government controls it, right? That's what, private here means the open blockchain that he's proposing, which is run by P2P nodes. So that's it. So what possible problems are there if it is run by government? And then if it is run by government, what could be the problem? Basically, government can see every individual's transactions and then so on. And if there is a failure of a single server, there is also a problem. So if you have a wide array of P2P node all scattered around the globe, that is much more safer than a single server run by a state. Okay, that type of thing. And then this is another picture of time-stamping server, which has, this is similar to the previous picture. So you can take a look at it. And then that is the time-stamping server and blockchain ideas was used by a state, which is Estonia. Estonia has had a blockchain much earlier than Bitcoin. Bitcoin was born in 1918? No, 19, no, sorry. I got all mixed. Bitcoin was born in 2009, right? And then Estonian blockchain existed starting 2012. So about 6 years earlier than Bitcoin, Estonia has used blockchain. Okay? 6 years. And 6 years prior to the Bitcoin. Okay? And then this book tells you about that, or you can visit Estonian blockchain website, then it tells you the story. So how did they do? But they didn't use the P2P network. So how did they do? They use blockchain, and there is a hash value, and then they publish this hash value in the newspaper. Just like what Satoshi has told you in his white paper. So they publish this hash value in a newspaper, and then once they have published this transactions hash in the newspaper, what is going to be the consequence, or what is going to be the effect? Can anyone change the transaction after hash has been published? Yes, they can, right? They can change it, right? So they can change so once this block has been published, whose hash value, let's say some number, gibberish number, right? In a newspaper, right? After this has been published, anyone can change it, right? But others can verify if this block is valid or not. And then all the person has to do is hash of this of this block, right? And then that hash is going to be what? After someone has tampered with it, this hash value and the published hash value are they equal to each other? No. So this hash value is not going to be equal to that one. So people will not trust this tempered block. So they are not going to accept it. Okay? So you cannot change it without being detected for your tempering. Right? So that's the effect. All right. But someone has to store this record in private, right? Okay. In the Estonian blockchain, government controls it. In the Bitcoin network, they have this transaction record in the blockchain itself, right? But this blockchain, the amount of storage that it can have is just 1,000 blocks per block, right? I mean, 1,000 transactions per block. That's all. 1 megabyte storage space. And then it is growing in each 10 minutes, right? Growing and growing, okay? And Estonian blockchain, so you can read the rest of them. So Estonian blockchain is also append-only record. So you just add the record. That's it, okay? All right. Do you have any questions on this? The rest of them you can read about it, okay? And then proof of work. You can read about this proof of work because I have explained everything already. So you can read about it by yourself. Proof of work. Why do you need a proof of work? Once you have put on the proof of work, no one can change it, right? But since I have explained a little bit about proof of stake in answering her question, right? What happens if you use a proof of stake? What happens? How long does it take for anyone to redo all the work? Because there is no proof of work put on it. Anyone can generate from first block to the maybe 1 million block within a second, right? You can change right away, right? So anyone can launch an attack, right? But proof of stake, the system is going this way. You have to first deposit your money, right? And then if you attack me, you can attack because there is no POW attached to it. Anyone can attack. But if you do that, I will take away your money that you deposited. That's that system, okay? So that's not like, that is not like a, Bitcoin system. Bitcoin, you cannot make an attack. But POS is you can make an attack. But if you do that, you acted badly, so I will take away your money that you have deposited. That's two different approaches, completely different. Which one do you think is better? I will talk about POS later on. In the second half of this course, we will talk about Ethereum as well. So back then we will talk about more. And then the other one is seventh lecture. So this one talks about network, blockchain, scalability, block header, consensus, payment and change, and so on. So these are pretty light stuff, so I will go fast. So network. Network is very important, even though it is very easy to understand. So network, the steps to run the networks are as follows. Each transaction, new transactions are broadcast to all nodes, right? If there is a transaction, let others know. So it uses a gossip protocol, gossip. So you just send, and then other nodes just relay them to their neighbors. So after a couple of seconds, these new transactions are known to every node, right? Each node collects new transactions into a block. And then each node works on finding a difficult proof of work for its block. When a node finds a proof of work, it broadcasts the block to all nodes. Okay? Nodes accept the block only if all transactions in it are valid and not already spent. Okay? Nodes express their acceptance of the block by working on creating the next block, trying to extend this blockchain further. That's what accepting action is. Okay. If they don't accept, they will choose other chain to extend it. Okay. Then use the hash of the accepted block as the previous hash. So you get it, right? The nodes always consider the longest chain to be the correct one, okay? Correct one. And we'll keep working on extending it. Do you know why longest chain? Because it has largest POW embedded in it. POW, the amount of work spent to make this chain is the largest, right? Because it's the longest. If two nodes broadcast different versions of next block simultaneously, some nodes may receive one, the other, or the other first. If there are two chains of the same length, then they are equal, right? Node can just choose anyone, right? In the case they work on the first one, they receive. So if I receive this chain first, I will work on it. Why? Because someone has already been spending time to mine it. So this might have higher chance of getting mined first, right? So the tie will be broken when the next proof of work is found and one branch becomes longer, right? And the nodes that they are working on the other branch will then switch to the longer one. Okay, you know what this means, right? This sentence. This sentence, right? POW is very important. And so there is a two chain in contention. Right? So this one is a, let's say, 100-second block. And there is another blockchain which is same length, right? Then both of them are good. And then they are tied. Then any miner can work on extending this one or that one, right? But let's take a look at, there is a timestamp in it. Timestamp says this T102 is some second, and then T102 here is a T tilde. Let's say T tilde 102, T102. So that chain, this one is larger. Suppose this one was mined a little later, maybe split second later. Then people choose to mine this one once they know it. But why do you have this two different blockchain announcement almost the same time? Why? Because their nodes are scattered all around the globe. So for example, this is the one happening in America. So the nodes around it only received this one. And then maybe this here, this one is the mined in Europe, for example. There is a time delay between American continent and the European continent. So this might happen. So maybe American nodes building on this one, European nodes building on this one. But if there is a large time difference, then they will be aware of these things happening. Then they will choose to work on the longest one. Right? Am I? What? Am I not getting through here? So if there is a tie, right? Tie can happen with a split second difference because the delay in the internet. You know how much is the average delay from America to Seoul? For example, New York to Seoul? millisecond? Millisecond difference? So Seoul to, let's say, New York, you can ping inside your computer, you can ping, right? Internet node in New York, right? Probably the round trip time is about 500 milliseconds, up to, right? Or not up to, like, on the average, let's say, right? So sometimes it might take more than a single second. So there is a delay between one node to the other in order for block to get propagated, right? So that's what this difference is. Now I'm getting through. Right. All right, so that's that. Once node became aware of this, the other one made another block, let's say 103, then this is obvious, then everyone work on this. Right? All right, that's what network is. And new transaction broadcasts do not necessarily need to reach all nodes. As long as they reach many nodes, they will get into a block before long. So block broadcasters are also tolerant of dropped messages. If a node does not receive a block, it will request it when it receives the next block and realizes it missed one. Okay? So basically this is based on fault tolerant engineering, right? So which is the internet. So are there any guarantee for transactions to be included in the into blocks? There's no guarantee, but in the average sense, they will get propagated all blocks. So eventually they will get into the block. And but if the production rate of transactions is higher than the service rate, then there might be some dropped transactions. If more transactions are pumped through the network, some of the transactions will not get into the block. Right? Throughput is maximum throughput is what? 1,000 transactions per 10 minutes. If you supply more transactions higher than this throughput rate, then those transactions, there will be transactions will not get into the block. Then they have to resend it. So that is what it is. So in this case, this has a mechanism. So this is a market mechanism. So in order to get into the block of a busy network, what do you have to do? There is a transaction fee, and then you have to pay higher fee to the miner. Then miner will select those transactions with higher transaction fees first, right? So that's what is happening. So if network is getting busy, you have to pay more. More here, it means a transaction fee. So now this is the first time we talk about transaction fee. There is not only the mining reward, but there is also a mechanism called transaction fee. You have to pay the miners a fee so that the miners can pick up your transaction and then put it into the block. Right? Higher the fee, higher the chance your transaction will be put on a block earlier, right, than the others. All right, so so Bitcoin is a tricky thing. It is socio-political. It addresses socio-political, economical issues, and then it also talks about market mechanism, game theory, and so on. So this is very, very peculiar invention. Yeah. So the people or the person who invented Bitcoin knows economy, knows game theory, knows market mechanism, knows political issues, knows the history of money. So he's a genius in all aspects, I think. And then he also knows internet, how internet works, how routing works, how network works. TCP/IP protocol, he knows everything. So you can read about it. And then here it says, it talks about blockchain scalability, and once the latest, so it also talk about reclaiming the disk space. So when can the record in the blockchain can be erased, right? And then he says, if this address has no assets in it, no Bitcoin anymore, then you can erase it. Okay. Once the latest transaction in a coin is buried under inner blocks, the spent transactions before it can be discarded to save disk space. To facilitate this without breaking the block's hash, but once you have done that, you shouldn't violate this transaction record, which is a hash chain, right? Hash chain should not be changed when you erase a certain part of content. That's all you have to be worried about. So to facilitate this without breaking the block's hash, transactions are hashed in a Merkle tree. Now I'm talking about Merkle tree. So this is a new concept with only the root included in the block hash. All the blocks can then be compacted by stubbing off branches of the tree. The interior hashes do not need to be stored. So this is the Merkle tree. So there is a block within the block. There is a block header. Block header is about 8 fields, eight items in the block header. But for the purpose of this discussion, I will only have 3 items. So previous hash, root hash. The root hash is nothing but hash of all the transactions within the block. And then this block has, let's suppose, 4 transactions, transaction 0 to transaction 3. And then each transaction, you hash the content of transaction, and then you have a hash value. Transaction, hash value. Transaction, hash value. Transaction, hash value. Since each transaction is unique, you have 4 different unique hashes. And then you choose 2 of them and then put it into the hash function, and then you get hash again. So put these 2 as an input to a hash function, then you get new hash. So I named it hash of transaction 0 and 1. And then this is a hash of transaction 2 and 3. And then finally you put these 2 hashes into the hash function, and then you get root hash. So this root hash is a hash of all these 4 transactions. Okay? And then it is structured this way by the Satoshi Nakamoto, because once you have done this, you can erase some of them. And this is also efficient in terms of generating hash, doing each one using 2 inputs. So here, suppose that the recipient of these transactions has no more balance left. So he has the person, for example, A, B, C, let's suppose. A has spent all his money, all his Bitcoin, right? After this block, right? Many blocks. And then the person A has no more assets. So this one is useless. And then same thing occurred with the owner of this transaction 1. Same thing for owner of transaction number 2. All these guys have spent all the Bitcoin in a later blocks, right? Then, Bitcoin miner comes here and says, all right, I don't need to keep this record anymore because there is no asset to keep track of, right? Then just erase it, erase it, erase it, erase it, erase it. All you have to make sure is that this root transaction does not change. Okay? Then you can erase. Okay? Then you can save the disk space. Okay? So that's what is happening right here. You can change, you can erase these transactions, all of them, but you should not erase these, right? Because others has to verify if root hash is correct or not. Okay. All right, that's what reclaiming the block space. And because block space is very, very valuable, a block header with no transactions would be about 80 bytes. So there is a block header and block body. Block body is this Merkle tree structure. And then total, you have a 1 megabyte. And the block header is 80 byte. Block header is 80 byte. If we suppose blocks are generated every 10 minutes, 80 bytes times 6 times 24 times 365, that is 4.2 megabyte per year. So this is critical information, okay? So why do we have a 6 here? 365 is 1 year, 24 hours. In an hour, you get 6 blocks because 10 minutes is the average time. So that's that. And then if you do that, you get 4.2 megabyte per year increase in block space. This is the absolute needed block space. Right? But on top of this, you have unerased transactions, which is about 1 megabyte. So you have to multiply with 1 megabyte right here in order to keep the whole record. And with the computer systems typically selling with the 2 gigabyte of RAM, there is a Moore's law. And then, if you spend the same amount of money, basically Moore's law says what? Higher disk space, right? Each year. So he says that this type of increase is manageable, right? Because technology improves each year, right? So the storage space will be increased with the same amount of money spent, right? So that's what it is. And I think I should stop here. So now next time I will talk about the rest of them. Basically, I'll talk about the block header. Block header, there are these information, and then it costs about 80 bytes. I will talk about that next time. All right, and in the meantime, I have reposited the homework set for 13 videos.